yes and choose to live with courage no matter what. The enemy wouldn't mess with you if you weren't somebody. Obviously, he sees you're a potential threat to his plans. So why did the devil tempt Jesus? Maybe he did not know who Jesus really is. Maybe he was not sure what a Messiah could mean. Maybe he was just being him, the tempter. But now we know that temptations could come from the devil, and his style is to take shortcuts. If you are the Son of God, command this stone to be turned into bread. That is taking shortcuts. Life is a journey, and there is really no real shortcuts to the most important destinations of our lives. There is only the long way to Calvary. The most important part of life is not where it begins nor where it arrives. It is where the learnings are. That is on the journey. So prepare yourself for a dusty road, a rocky hill, or a steep cliff. Prepare yourself for challenges. Your liabilities become your launching pads. This is the story of that small guy whose name was Zacchaeus, and it's found on Luke 19 verses 1 to 10. Whatever you have as a liability could turn out to be your greatest asset if it drives you up a tree and cause you to search for Jesus. If your liability makes you desperate, it can make you willing to do what others are not willing to do. It can make you ignore what other people think and make you want to see Jesus. If you are interested in seeing Jesus, you will see him not only at a distance, but also up close. He will invite himself to your house. It will change your life. You learn things you would never learn if your life had been normal and average. That's the beauty with challenges. If God trusts you with a severe trial, a dark season, it's only because he wants to invite himself to your house. He has something for you that will come right out of your bad situation. The second story is about the woman with hemorrhage, and it's found on Luke 8:43. She did not climb a tree. She ran and shoved and pushed her way through the press of bodies in the crowd until she was able to touch the tassel of Jesus' cloak. She dropped to her knees and touched the hem of Jesus' garment. She was thinking, out of all these people, it's going to be me, meaning I'm going to find healing today. She didn't care what anybody else thought of her. Right then, she had served her time. She had to connect with Jesus. What if she'd never had the problem in the first place? Do you think she would have developed so much faith and fearlessness? Of course she wouldn't have. She would have missed Jesus too. Sometimes you have to go through seasons when you're living in God's nothing. Why? It's so you will seek Him with passionate desperation. When you are down to nothing, God really is up to something. Your problem is the key to your promotion. This is another familiar story that you find in 1 Samuel 17. It's about Goliath and David. And without Goliath, probably David will not be as famous as he is. David could have just continued tending sheep out in the fields if God had not sent Goliath. So here is the story in 1 Samuel 17, the challenge of Goliath. David never called Goliath a giant. Instead, he called him the uncircumcised Philistine. The focus was that Goliath was an uncovenant man. David was declaring him to be much smaller than God. Who was the true giant in the situation? Can you figure out what your Goliath is? What your biggest obstacle or problem in life? Is it the pandemic? Is it the coronavirus? What's your biggest obstacle or problem? It may just be the key to your promotion. In order for you to step into your destiny, you will need to face down your Goliath-sized problem in God's unbeatable strength. Believing that you can do it is more than half of your battle. Without our liabilities, most of us would just settle for the status quo. We'd never exert ourselves to move up to grab hold of God's provision for our lives. The next story is about the lepers. And you can find the story in the second book of Kings. The setting is in the city of Samaria. The 4 lepers live outside the city wall of Samaria since they were contaminated with leprosy. People would throw food scraps over the wall, and that was enough to keep them alive. The lepers would have sat there for years, content with the scraps, if they had not been thrown into a major crisis. The king of Syria besieged the city of Samaria, and the people began to starve to death. They were so hungry. No more scraps came over the wall for the poor lepers. They just sat there and listened to their stomach growl. The lepers decided to go into the enemy's camp. If they got killed, what difference would it make? They were going to die anyway. A famine will help you make a destiny decision. It was time for them to move out. They need to be motivated to leave behind the land of famine and walk into the place of plenty. A famine made these lepers get up and walk toward the place where they knew there was food. They walked by faith. When they got at the edge of the camp, what did they find? Nobody. The Syrians were gone. They had thought they heard the sound of an army coming. They thought Egypt was on the attack. They had left everything, food, clothing, and everything else. And they flew away. Those lepers expected a barrage of arrows, but instead the bigger foe turned out to be the fear inside of them. The circumstances have never been our real problem. You know what our real problems are? God is always greater than anything out there. The real problem has always been the battles inside our own minds and hearts. That's our real problem. You know that from experience. You know that it's true. That is why you must believe that you can. We must all believe that we can. Our liabilities are not physical ones, but lack of faith and the lack of perseverance. It can sometimes take years before we see results. We need to hold on to our vision through all sorts of setbacks. We need to believe that our God is more than able to carry us through. He will every time if we hang on to Him. The question now is, what is your stone to be turned into bread? In other words, what is your greatest temptation? Where is your sycamore to climb? Meaning, what do you do in order to solve your challenges and to deal with them? How long is your hemorrhage? Like that woman, is it 12 years? Is it 10 years? Who is your Goliath? Which means, what is your biggest problem in life? What is that greatest burden that you carry? When is your famine? When do you feel that there is too much poverty in your life, in your family? How far is your Calvary? That's a good question to ask. Your seemingly insurmountable problems can become launching platforms for your faith. Sometimes you must go through seasons when you're living in God's nothing, so you will seek Him with passionate desperation. Make a positive confession. Open your mouth with praise. Confess that your God is able, because He is. Calvary is not your final destiny. There is learning behind the suffering, strength behind the problem. Also, there is growth beyond the challenge, life beyond the cross.